Delighted to have you here and to have the opportunity to hear this discussion about resilience by the team. Matt, how do I advance these slides? Oh, I got to use the clicker. That's all right. You can just help me. Okay. Awesome. So welcome everybody. Just echoing Matt's welcomes. So the Lewis Center is working to advance our vision of a net zero, resilient, healthy, and inclusive world where every person, community, and business has the opportunity to thrive. Really focused on accelerating action for sustainability in real estate and in communities with an emphasis on that action part. We have 4 different goals that intersect with each other. Cultivating leadership and knowledge. So convenings like this is one way that we really do that. Catalyzing adoption of sustainability practices across the real estate value chain, all of the different folks that are involved in real estate and community building, helping communities solve challenges, advancing policy solutions and best practices. And we do that via convenings like this one, technical assistance on the ground, often delivered via our district council network and our network of members, our publications and resources. So we invite everybody to check out our publications at our website, uli.org/sustainability, and our leadership network. So we run a few different leadership programs that are aimed at advancing these best practices in real estate. We have 4 different intersecting programs: our decarbonization program, the urban resilience program that Lindsay runs, the healthy places program that Matt leads up, and then our Greenprint community of practice. How many of you here are familiar with ULI as an organization? Awesome. So ULI is a research and education nonprofit. We are a membership-based organization, so we're really focused on helping our members understand cutting-edge issues, driving impact in your professional practice and in their leadership in communities. And our mission is to shape the future of the built environment for transformative impact in communities worldwide. If you're not a ULI member currently, I encourage you to check out all of the benefits of membership, which include being part of an incredibly robust and impactful network. As I mentioned earlier, we run a couple of different leadership programs. One of those is the Waterwise Development Coalition. So our colleague Marianne there is the lead for this coalition. So this is an opportunity for folks that are grappling with water scarce environments to get together, to compare notes, to think about what water smart development looks like. It's a virtual convening series, and if you have an interest in that, Marianne can tell you all about it. And next up, we have the Lewis Center Exchange. So this is an exchange program that is open to all ULI members. We meet on a sort of bi-monthly basis where we talk about cutting edge issues at the intersection of all of the different topics that the Lewis Center cares about. If you are interested in this or interested in checking it out as a guest, we invite you to email us to learn more. Now we're very excited to have the opportunity to hear from our panelists, and my colleague Lindsay Brugger will introduce our Urban Resilience Program and the panel. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thank you. And just to follow on Rachel's slides, if folks are wondering what's on the screen here, in addition to ULI National having an urban resilience program, which I'll talk about in a minute, we do have amazing local district councils and national councils that do incredible resilience work. And so in case anyone wants to make a trip to places like Florida or Philadelphia or Savannah, I just wanted to uplift that there's resilience content really happening across the globe through ULI's amazing network of members.
And I was supposed to make an announcement before I handed it over. So for speakers and for anybody asking questions, the folks that are online can really only hear us if we're holding the mic and also holding it close to our mouths. So Lindsay, do you want to maybe put yours a little bit closer?
Oh, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And please feel free to use the chat, anyone online, and notify us if we're not able to hear us. And no, it's on, but it's not working. But maybe you can go to next slide. Okay. So as everyone said, I'm Lindsay Brugger. I'm Vice President of ULI's Urban Resilience Program, which is part of the Randall Lewis Center for Sustainability in Real Estate. The Urban Resilience Program helps our buildings, cities, and communities be better prepared for the impacts of climate change and other environmental vulnerabilities. And, working in this field, I often get asked how I manage to stay optimistic. And I can understand that question. It can be really hard sometimes as we see communities hit day after day, catastrophe after catastrophe. And we have all watched and we've all had our hearts broken as we've seen Western North Carolina and Los Angeles and St. Louis really struggle over the last few years. And those are really only the most recent ones. And while those events are what spurred today's conversation, I hope that today we can really find the optimism and the opportunity in resilience. Today, we're going to be discussing how communities are using various forms of infrastructure to not only reduce vulnerability to extreme weather events, but to really capitalize on the economic, environmental, and social co-benefits that strengthen entire communities. So here with me to share their stories of resilience, we have Dr. Estelle-Marie Montgomery, who is the Executive Director of the FH Faunteroy Center and Resilience Incubator, ironically based here in DC, but she is joining us from California today. So very glad that she's able to be part of our hybrid engagement here. Next to me, we have Andy Sauer from the from Burns and McDonnell. He's the National Stormwater Management Practice Leader. And then on the end, rounding out our panel is Matt Johnson. He is the Supervisory Environmental Protection Specialist at DC's Department of Energy and the Environment. And so the way we're going to structure our panel discussion today is each of our panelists are going to do just kind of a 5-minute scene setter to give you a sense of their perspective and their work. And then we'll dive into a structured conversation, and you will be part of that conversation. So I'll tee up a few questions in the beginning while you get your bearings, but then I hope that you'll all engage and be part of this panel as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to kick us off.
Your clicker working?
Don't know.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Lindsay said, my name is Matt Johnson. I work at the Department of Energy and Environment locally here for the district government, and I'm going to be talking about the district's stormwater retention credit, or SRC, trading program. This is a market-based approach to water quality outcomes, and as Lindsay had kind of alluded to, part of the driver of this program was trying to achieve triple bottom line outcomes, thinking about using a market-based approach to address water quality, to address social co-benefits, and to address some environmental justice concerns. So everyone knows stormwater in urban areas is a very big problem. In the district, we can see a 1.2-inch rainfall storm generate 525 million gallons of runoff. And that is generally due to the fact that 43% of the district is impervious, so it's relatively built out, and that's unlikely to change. And so the way you address that is by doing some nature-based solutions. For the district, we have stormwater regulations that require green infrastructure retrofits for redevelopment and major development projects in the district. And the intention there is to help remediate some of the damages that's already been done, but then also help to restore our local water bodies by removing trash and pollutants from stormwater runoff that accrues in these large storms. One of the issues that we also see is large-scale stream degradation. This picture of one of my colleagues is one of my favorite to share to folks. This is a woman who's standing in a stream bank that's supposed to be 2-3 feet deep and 4 to 5 feet wide, and it's 25 feet deep and 30 feet wide, and that's all due to the sheer volume of stormwater that erodes these stream banks and helps to drastically increase sediment in our major receiving water bodies like the Anacostia River and the Potomac. The stormwater challenge in the district isn't completely unique, but what we did is leverage that to try and solve the problem how it best fits locally. We've got two different storm sewer systems here, the combined sewer system in the center of the city. There's a 3.2 billion gallon CSO overflow issue there. And there's a multi-billion-dollar ongoing effort by the DC's Water and Sewer Authority to address that capital infrastructure project. They're building subway-sized tunnels under the city. The larger portion of the district, or the MSOR, Municipal Storm Separate Sewer System, is DOEE's purview, and there we are trying to eliminate the direct discharge of stormwater into the water bodies without treatment. Requires about $7 billion. That figure is about 10 years old. That's probably closer to 12 or $13 billion, and we have $10 million annually. So if our timeline is 170 years, we're all set, but none of us have that kind of timeline. So what we do is we establish regulations and enable the credit trading market to help accelerate these retrofits. Our stormwater rule, which was promulgated in 2013, requires large development projects to install GI. There's an annual retention requirement. Part of the ability to pass these rules was introducing compliance flexibility. So if people couldn't meet the requirement on site, they could shift that offsite, and that offsite retention helped to disperse GI, trying to achieve those triple bottom line outcomes. And it also helps to increase overall retention in the district. This offsite retention is met with stormwater retention credits, or SRCs. One credit equals 1 gallon of retention over 1 year. There's a lot more to this, but I'm going to try and speed this up by just going through an example to highlight how a transaction occurs. You've got a large-scale development that has a 10,000 gallon stormwater management requirement. On site, they install green infrastructure, like a bioretention that can retain 7,000 gallons. They choose like a rooftop pool or some underground parking, and so they want to opt for a 3,000 gallon offsite requirement. To the 7,000 onsite plus a 3,000 offsite equals their 10,000 gallon requirement. That creates the demand in our marketplace. The supply is created when you've got a voluntary organization partnering with landowners where GI wouldn't normally end up, typically in the areas where the land values are lower, installing voluntary stormwater retention credits. Generally at no cost to the property owner, and in fact, it's benefits that are realized by the property owners. They generate these stormwater retention credits that creates the supply in our marketplace. And then the market transaction is when one of these developers buys those credits from the SRC generating business, what we call SRC aggregators, to comply with their requirement. They've got a 10,000 gallon requirement, 7,000 gallons on site, 3,000 annual requirement off site. So they buy 18,000 SRCs and they comply for 6 years. And that is kind of like wash, rinse, repeat. And so that is the simplified version of our market mechanics and the way that we are leveraging our stormwater regulations to try and achieve greater triple bottom outcomes in the district. Thanks. You go ahead and skip the rest. A little long.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Andy?
All right. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to build on that with kind of this blue-green example here. Hopefully hear me here with Mike. I like to use this slide a lot to kind of introduce what I see as resiliency. We talk about climate change. We talk about redundancy, risk. And the bottom one there means systems evaluation. I'm going to give you an example of what I mean by systems evaluation. But really, I think it's important for us sometimes to think about what is resilience? What is resiliency? The Illinois Sustainability and Resilient Infrastructure Program has a great definition that I use all the time at the bottom of the screen there. And I like to read it because I think it's important because it's a great definition. It refers to the ability of such infrastructure systems, including the interconnection between ecosystem and social system, to absorb disturbances and still retain their basic function and structural capacity. And I think that's really important when we think about urban infrastructure. We don't think about them enough as systems. And we don't think about that social impact of how that happens. But I also think there's a strong connection between resiliency and sustainability. And what I mean by that is it takes a broader, collaborative, and holistic system planning, design, and management of public infrastructure And really that requires leadership. And that's really where the space that I operate in a lot is trying to, I'll just say, motivate some of our leaders, cities, utilities, to do things differently in stormwater management than they did 20 years ago. And I'm going to show you an example of that. It took a lot of effort to do this, but I think if we all work together, you can have these solutions that become far more holistic. And what I'm going to show you here today is a project we're currently constructing in Kansas City, Missouri. I guess I kind of jumped in and failed to introduce myself here a little bit, but I am Andy Sauer. I'm from the Kansas City metro area. I've been working in this area for over 28 years, and this is a project in our core historical area called Westport. The reason it's called Westport, it's where the stagecoach left from in the 1850s and 1860s. It's the oldest infrastructure. It's now an entertainment district that has been overlooked and has severe and frequent flooding. I'm going to show you some actual videos of what that looks like. But first, when we think about urban areas, right, as Matt was showing, look at the area outline. This is the watershed for this area, 80% impervious area. This is what it looks like today, right? It's an area that's been kind of redeveloped, used to have a train track, used to have docks. And so it's not very much looking like an entertainment district. It's kind of been overlooked, mainly because these areas I just showed you flood severely. Okay. I hope this little video plays. So this is a radar rainfall. Who watches the weather at night with all the thunderstorms, right? This is how rain actually happens, right? How many in this room think that when we model stormwater, we actually use that type of rain event? We typically do not. So the example I'm going to show you is we designed this solution to meet a real rainfall event that I just showed you, because you can see how rain, it changes in time and space. Makes a big difference in watershed. And we now have the tools. We can take this radar rainfall data and put it into a two-dimensional tool or a model. And that's what we did for this project. And why? See if I can get off of this. Sorry. This is what happens when that radar rainfall I just showed you. That's not 5, that's not 8 inches of rain. That's less than 2 inches of rain, but it happened in 45 minutes. So this is a problem we're trying to solve. But if you don't get outside of your box, understand the total system, meaning how does the system actually work, you never solve it. This particular watershed has been studied 3 times by the city. It's over a $40 million solution. Why? Because we are thinking about it very discreetly as I need to capture and route stormwater as fast as possible away from this area. What if we think about it a different way? What if stormwater is a resource? What if we capture it, control it, and convey it to meet a certain level that's the most frequent? In this case, this frequent event, which is about a 2-inch event, it's very intense. This is what the business owners wanted solved. They didn't really care about a 10 or 100-year event. Now, this solution will benefit that, but it's not going to solve the 100-year event. It's going to benefit the most severe and intense event that happens. Okay? If I can get past it, sorry. So we applied a 2D model. I showed you the rainfall. This is the surface condition. All the topography goes into that. And then cool thing about this, we had all the pictures from all the owners. And so we calibrated it to actual real pictures. This built trust in all the community, the business owners, to say, if you can solve this, we trust, we will buy into that. And that's that social community side of it, is working with the business owners, not just giving them a solution. So we're going to give you a 10-year, 100-year level service. A business owner or a property owner doesn't really understand what that means. They understand what this means when it rains 2 inches at a very intense rate. Their businesses were flooding almost every year. That's the problem we're trying to solve. So we used a 2D model to do that. We built trust. The picture on the left is what it was with that rain event I just showed you. The picture on the right is our proposed solution. You will notice we still have some blue areas, but instead of being 4 feet, it goes down to 6 or 7 inches. We didn't have enough money. The city doesn't have enough money to solve it all, but we can substantially improve this area. And then the last thing was here, we use a systems approach. So this is also within the combined sewer area. So at the very bottom of the watershed on the right, where the number 1 is at, we're going to build about 2 million gallons of underground storage in a park. And I'll show you some of the community benefits there. Along that whole corridor that you saw the picture of, we're putting in a large underground pipe, but we're capturing it with green infrastructure, pervious pavement, street planters with under drains. And at the very top of the watershed, where you see the number 3, we're also adding another 1.5 million gallons of storage. Once again, a systems approach. We're also adding real-time controls to both the upstream and downstream storage, so we get more adaptability, so that we can adapt in real time to real rainfall events. And then the final piece I think is exciting. The bottom end was an actual historical park. It was the first African-American school west of the Mississippi, called the Penn School. There's a lot of historical context. This whole neighborhood has now reinvented or been part of a major stakeholder. They're now bringing back the history of what this park was, where the school was. They're going to have a walk of history along this. So it was a really cool aspect of it, to re-engage this unused park for stormwater management underneath and for historical context above. And so I'll pass it off to our next speaker, talk, I think, more about kind of how we can integrate some of the social side of this.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Andy.
Can everyone hear me?
Okay. And Dr. Montgomery, the floor is yours.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, so let me get to my slide. Or slides, I should say. Thank you so much for that, Andy. And I am, in our prep, I had mentioned how much I am very much looking forward to speaking with you on the work that you do. Indeed, I'm going to talk more about the social component, but that systems definition that you gave, Andy, is quite relevant, because often the discussion starts with, indeed, the infrastructural component. In our case, we are located, for those of you who are familiar with Washington, D.C., or if you're not, at a location of D.C. often referred to as east of the river. The river is the Anacostia River. East of the Anacostia River, historically marginalized community, consists of the 7th and 8th wards in D.C. We are located in Ward 7. And Ward 7 is home to 87% of the single-family homes that are within the 100-year floodplain. So I'll repeat that again. Ward 7, 87% of single-family homes that are within the 100-year floodplain in Washington, D.C. If you add 7 and 8, you get up to the 90s. While that 100-year flood marker is urgent, the more urgent situation is exactly what Andy just showed, which is those intense rain events that take place. So some time ago, DOEE, Matt's colleagues at DOEE, went to a conference and learned about resilience hubs, and came back with the ambition to really look at where an idea of a resilience hub could really be implemented. And they came to Ward 7. This is way before my time. This is back in 2016. They came to Ward 7 and they said, so, we have this idea. What do you think? And, well, the community listened to what they were talking about and said, we think this is fantastic, but we're going to take the process over. So in fact, the stakeholders took over the process and said, we understand that you're interested in looking at this from the infrastructural component of resiliency, but there are other things that we deal with that are also urgent here, next to the fact that, yes, we are within the floodplain. So there are flood risks, there are power risks, we are, we experience heat islands and so forth. But as a marginalized community, we also have urgency, socioeconomic urgency. We have urgency in relation to health and wellness. So when you think about the health components, the food insecurities, and so forth. So really a process with multiple stakeholders in the academic setting, the government setting, and the community themselves, the Ward 7 Resilience Hub Community Coalition, really came together to map out ideas of what can be realized for Ward 7. Fast forwarding They went through extensive discussions. The community went through and looking at various community-based organizations as assets where this project could be realized. They ended up landing on the Faunteroy Center. At the time, it was the Faunteroy Center. We've forgotten our old name now, the FH Faunteroy Center and Enrichment Center, right? And said that given a lot of different components where we were located, the history and the trust that was already embedded in the organization, they would like to actually roll out the project with the Faunteroy Center. This was decided in 2019, but nothing existed. And when I say nothing existed, there wasn't really a strategy with local government in terms of how this community-led effort was going to be supported resource-wise, be it from technical assistance to actual funding. And the organization itself was a small organization and hadn't done anything like this. So we are literally building this whole process up from the ground. And this slide is to capture finally what we are looking to do in a nutshell. So I hope that you're able to see this clearly. Is that the case?
I think if you zoom in just a little bit more, that'll help us out. Great. Yeah, that's looking great. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of things are going on in this slide. Firstly, I just wanted to highlight what Andy spoke about, building resilience and creating sustainability as a goal, and addressing the multiple generations in the community. So we're not only focused on what the adults are doing or the vulnerability of the seniors, we're also looking at the vulnerability of the youth. Remember, across all of the different areas. We're also interested, obviously, in the infrastructural component of resiliency, right? So the environmental literacy, really making sure that the education of blue-green infrastructure is taking place within the community so that the community itself can really develop its own self-determination in the story, in the rolling out of building resilience and creating sustainability across socioeconomic determinants as well as infrastructural components. And the way we do that is through 4 programmatic pillars. One programmatic pillar, which is really focused on economic mobility, that's the workforce development and literacy, the health and wellness pillar, the emergency readiness and preparedness pillar. This is often what most people think about when they think about a resilience hub, is how do you prepare the community, right, in the event of an emergency? But what we're saying is actually community engagement is very important. We don't only want to sort of blow the whistle when something has gone wrong. We have to continue to build that trust and robustness with the community along programmatic areas that the community needs. And what we're hoping is that impact where we are again, I want to emphasize, in a marginalized community. So our day-to-day doesn't look pretty either. So there are daily stressors, socioeconomic, health and wellness related daily stressors that we are addressing to make the community more resilient so that their self-determination can be sustained. And while we're doing that, we're managing acute disruption, so the disasters that occur, and preparing the community through CERT training and so forth, and education. So we're looking to economically lift the community through economic mobility. So there's economic development for individuals and the community collectively that's taking place. And also community cohesiveness. A more cohesive community is a more resilient community in times of disruptions, but also with the acute, the daily stressors that are taking place. And always focusing on building the community capacity throughout the process. All through this whole process, we are always looking at the intersectionality of economic mobility and environmental literacy. So in terms of green, blue jobs and so forth, right? So there's always that intersectionality happening through these programmatic pillars. I wanted to also just bring attention to these boxes here. They don't look pretty because I haven't, had time to make them look pretty. It's basically getting at the fact that all of this is taking place and has been organized in a way that looks at normative, addressing daily stressors, recovery from disruption. And we're looking at the programmatic and services component of it, the information and communication component of it, how we're using the natural spaces around us. In our case, we have the Lederer Gardens across the street from us. Our project also involves a solar and battery backup system. We're looking at how operations and maintenance is also addressing each of these modes and making sure that we are always considering the component of accessibility and transportation in what we do. So I just wanted to show this. We're in the process of a build-out project so that you can appreciate, if you think back to our little circle infographic, in designing this expansion from where we were at 2,000 square feet to 5,000 additional square feet. So we're going to be 7,000 square feet of programmatic space, and designing various spaces, program rooms based on the needs of the community. As we were doing this design with the architects, with the engineers, we're always looking at, okay, what does a makerspace become in a disruption? And a disruption somewhere does not necessarily mean a total disruption everywhere, right? So looking at how each of these spaces can respond and collaborate with DOEE, with HCMA, and with our private partners as well. We have a lot of collaboration with business owners in the community. And so they have a vested interest in this project as well, and the success and the sustainability and resilience of this project. In the designing of this resilience hub, again, remember, it's the first community-led resilience hub in Washington, D.C. We want to make sure that when things are down, we're still operating. This is a community that's vulnerable to power outages because we have above ground power lines. So we have the solar and battery backup system that's in place. This is a community that's vulnerable to flooding. So we have actually gone through the extensive process of getting approval for a more resilient infrastructure against flooding as part of our build out. So I just wanted you all to appreciate that none of this is happening in isolation. So every slide you're seeing multiple types of funders, partners in this. This is on the construction side of things. This is on the funding side of things, but it looks even more crowded when we look at the programmatic side of things. We're looking to actually finish this build out project by the end of this year. Yeah, it's been quite a process. I'm not even getting into all of these things, but I just want to give you an appreciation. Once it's up and running, these are all of the areas. And again, leaning into the systems that Andy was talking about, this is what, when you actualize those systems, this is what it looks like. This is how it impacts a community. And then you're talking about the sustainability of the organization, something that, is an extra for us, excuse the misspell here, but the solar and battery backup supported by funding from DOEE, by the way, got to shout out DOEE whenever I can. They have truly been quite the partner through this. We're going to be able to monetize that. We're going to be able to monetize that system through tax credits, but also through SRECs, which is something that Matt just explained from the water retention process. So that's very exciting for us and the space as well in various ways. So this is a multifaceted, complex project. It's what it looks like to actualize those systems that Andy talks about. Thank you for setting me up for my presentation, Andy. I appreciate that. And I'll stop there. I can go on and on, Lindsay, as you know. But
It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Montgomery. And thank you to all our panelists for sharing this work and for being with us today. As I mentioned, I do want everyone in the room and online to be part of the discussion, but one of the things I do love about this group is that it brings together so many diverse perspectives from so many different industries. So the question I'll use to kick off the conversation today is I'll ask our panelists, and maybe we can start with you, Dr. Montgomery, how did public and private sector actors really come together on your project? And where were there challenges? And, if those challenges did exist, how were those challenges overcome?
So firstly, I'm going to say that it was imperative that the public sector, government in particular, stepped up. And I'm again going to highlight DOEE because they were the beginning of that process with us from a public perspective, where they recognized that while they did not have the funds to support this process, the credibility of the project needed to be backed by a government agency and a respected government agency. And so they stepped up. They stepped up to provide the official support for the project. And we were able to use that to then shop the project with federal funding. So we were able to position ourselves for federal funding with the House of Representatives because DOE stepped up. Now, let me just say, next to DOE on the private side was Georgetown University, right? So having a reputable educational institution also step up brought in the private sector players. Oh, Georgetown has been involved in this. You know, it's one thing if government is involved in this, but Georgetown is involved in this. Why is Georgetown involved in this? Oh, perhaps we should take a look at this. So whilst it started off with partners who were not able to financially commit to the process, what they did do was use their platform to commit to the project. And that allowed me to do my job more effectively by bringing in more and more players and explaining to them why this is important to them. Now, let me say, my job has become unfortunately easier recently. The idea that a resilience hub, the idea of a resilience hub is something that everyone now recognizes while we face all the cuts that we face federally. Like, oh, well, now we get it, right? And so that's how the platform from the government side and the educational institution, how we were able to use that and leverage that to really pull in the rest of federal level funding and also the private sector. I don't know if that answers your question or you want me to dig deeper.
No, I think that's a great start. And Andy, maybe you want to talk a little bit about how you bring together kind of the business community with your government-led work.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to jump in there. So the project I showed, there was a business league called the Westport Regional Business League that had a new executive director. And he was really the leadership that basically said to the city that, what you've done is not good enough. And really what I mean by that is I mentioned that it had been studied so many times and they weren't worried about the 10 or the 100-year event. They wanted that frequent flooding because they were losing businesses in this historic way. It was becoming more and more blighted because the business owners were saying, we can't have a business here. We can't get insurance because it's flooding every year. And so it really was driven by that private entity, that regional business league. But to Dr. Montgomery's point, it took then the city, they got with some of their elected officials, and the city then became, we can do this differently. And we got a study going. And we had a really collaborative stakeholder process, which involved the regional business league, all the business owners, 2 influential city council members in their district, the parks department. I mentioned that park at the bottom end, and then the Steptoe Lives, which was that historical neighborhood that got engaged and supported it. And once you start to build up momentum, you can start to have different solutions then. And now that made my life a little bit easier because the crazy ideas I was throwing out there all of a sudden became more affordable. People said, we want to rebuild this street. We want to bring back street trees. And so it really became a positive, and the city is really building on that now. This will be I was just in a meeting yesterday. I'm trying to remember, it's the 3rd or 4th new project. We're going to do a similar approach. And so it does start to build on itself, but it does take leadership. Point there.
Matt, anything to add? You certainly work with the private sector developers quite a bit.
Sure, I'll chime in. The promulgation of our stormwater rule back in 2013 is kind of the impetus for all of the credit trading program that we have refined since then. And its beginnings start with a sea change in the way that the district was regulating development. Back then, detention kind of was the standard and it woefully kind of addressed water quality. While it did impact some of large storm events, what it didn't do is manage the intensity, duration, and frequency of storms. It just did this, like, this large volume will be retained, and that doesn't happen very often. What we heard from the Building Industry Association is that we can't meet this standard that you're setting, so you need to provide an alternative compliance path, and that alternative compliance path enabled the credit trading program, which was, from DOE's perspective, always something we wanted to implement with the regulations, but we wanted to have it suggested to us by the business industry, make it easier for proposing. And today we engage with the building industry, and ULI helped us on a grant a few years ago about how to more effectively engage with the building industry about taking on this offsite retention volume that I highlighted in my example, because from the district's perspective, the water quality outcomes are great, but if there aren't benefits to people who are going under these developments, if there isn't bottom line benefits or social benefits that they may be able to latch onto, then it doesn't make a lot of business sense for them. And so learning how to better engage and speak the language of the Skanskas and the large international developers that work in the city, as well as W.C. Smiths, the local developers that work in the city, to help understand how we can work together to solve not only the issues that we face from an environmental degradation standpoint, but also compliance costs issues and the flexibility to be able to meet these regulations. And so that that partnership between the district government, specifically DOE, and the private entities that are undertaking this development was instrumental.
Right. Well, I have a whole list of questions, but I want to open it up to see if anyone online or in the room has a burning question. And if you're in the room, my colleague Matt will hand you the mic so that our virtual friends can hear you.
And folks online, you can just feel free to unmute, and we'll be able to hear you. All right.
I don't actually, this might be an obvious question to you all, but I don't know the answer. So I'm going to ask the question. So when the water that you're retaining, that you're putting into your storage places, or that you're doing green infrastructure with, like, what is that water good for later? Is it like, does it need to be cleaned before it can be used? Is it just hanging out there? Is it, what happens to that water? Like, how is it useful later on? So I just wanted to ask that question.
No, it's a good question. I get it quite a bit. In my part of the world in the Midwest, we have quite a few clay soils, so I get yelled at a lot that we can't infiltrate any water. Unfortunately, if you actually take a soil class, I'm actually an ag engineer. Clay soils actually love water. They just don't give it up very easily. And so we are able to actually infiltrate and create more of a sustainable water source for the same vegetation. That's my biggest passion, is how we do that. In this case, the example I gave here too, I think it's once again thinking about a systems approach. So one system is the soil, water, vegetation system. But in this case, we're also using a system of underground storage vaults with real-time controls. And so we're using technology to retain that. And then I didn't show this in my example, but we also have a park area with another 2-acre green infrastructure downstream. So I'm going to use that stored water to sustain the downstream green infrastructure. I can't say irrigate because the state of Missouri has irrigation water quality. I can't spray dirty water into the air, but I can dewater it to a green infrastructure. So sometimes, I think you mentioned terminology, maybe terminology matters, but so we're trying to use that stored stormwater to sustain downstream green infrastructure. Ultimately, in the case where I'm at, if it's dewatered back to the combined system, it'll actually be treated at the wastewater treatment plant. So we'll even get a higher level of standard there. But that's a long-winded answer to your question. But I think thinking about how that water can be used and reused instead of just capturing it and conveying it. I love Matt's picture of the streams. I have pictures of those streams too. A gallon of water, if we just collect it and release it, has a lot of potential energy. It goes into streams and has huge irrigation problems. So any way that I can capture and control and release that in a little bit more sustainable way, I think is a great benefit to our streams. No matter if it does have some, love to get all the pollutants out, but you're never going to get them all. But if we get some of that volume, at least slow it down and control it, I think we get a lot better benefit. So, that's a long-winded answer. I can talk about that.
I'll chime in here just from like a local perspective. If you think where we are right now, we're in the combined sewer system in the District of Columbia. And so the water that falls here goes into a very old infrastructure that was not designed for landscape that was this much concrete. And so there's zero ability or limited ability for the natural landscape to absorb any water. That absorption has benefits, recharges aquifers, gets filtered until it gets released back. Your underground water conveyance has natural cleaning properties that do things for free, as opposed to the wastewater treatment centers that Andy had mentioned. But here, the issue is that when you get a storm, and like I said, that 1.2-inch storm in the district's 525 million gallons of runoff. We don't have the infrastructure for that. So what you get is combined sewer overflows. Combined sewer, as the name suggests, is your stormwater and your sanitary water. Taking a shower, using the toilets. And so when there's an overflow, that sanitary water, along with dirty stormwater, but the sanitary water gets dumped into our water bodies. And so part of the benefit is just that water quality outcome. If you can hold it until that sewer system can treat it later and slowly release it, then you get that kind of obvious benefit. And that's the 3.2 billion gallon issue that BC Water is addressing and it has already addressed. The Anacostia Tunnel came online in 2022, 21, and reduced overflows in the Anacostia by 93%. That's incredibly impactful. The Potomac Tunnel will come online, I think, 2032, reduce overflows in the Potomac by 98%. Overall, it'll be a 96% reduction of overflows in the District of Columbia, which is huge. But that retention can also be impactful because if you're in the MS4 and that water is running, has no place to infiltrate, then what it does is pick up all the pollutants that are all over the ground as well. And so by retaining it on site, yes, you're helping to recharge aquifers. Yes, there's natural treatment that's happening, but you've got this engineering treatment that also reduces flow to reduce the pollutants that are being collected otherwise. And then, as Dr. Montgomery said, stormwater can be a resource. They have monetized the collection of stormwater to help fund resiliency programs. And, that's what the market-based credit trading program does, is to help to monetize what is a problem and have it become a resource.
May I use this opportunity to just talk about water from the people systems, community
Please
systems
do.
perspective? So I love the answers from Andy and Matt, and now I just want to give you all the flip side on the community side regarding water. So when that water is contaminated and then there's an alert that goes out, do not drink this water. DC Water is having some issues, right? This is when we talk about that acute disruption, now the resilience hub needs to turn on for the community and communicate out to the community real time, and also provide resources, water resources that we would have on site, right? That's how we then become activated. The environmental literacy that I talked about. So these infrastructural projects that Matt and Andy have been talking about, there's a lot of discussion taking place right now about the blue-green infrastructure that crosses through the community that we serve. And in order for those projects to be successful for the community at large, to maximize the use of the stormwater, you must educate the community. And unfortunately, the language that's often used is very, very, it's inaccessible language. And it's not about the marginalized community not being educated. It's about when scientists are amongst themselves, they use scientific language. And every layman who's not in this work doesn't understand what you're talking about. And so our work in the community engagement part is to facilitate those community gatherings where we're saying, okay, this is really important. We know when it rains, we have community members whose homes get flooded so often that even when it drizzles, they have severe anxiety. So when we talk about that mental health component, this is what I mean about the intersectionality. So I just wanted to bring the human component, on top of whenever we're talking about these, infrastructural
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Other questions before I jump to my next question? Yes, in the back, and we'll make sure we use the mic.
Thank you. I have a question that feeds right into what you were just saying, Dr. Montgomery, about how to best translate technical knowledge for everyday language. That's something that I struggle with a lot. My background is in green infrastructure, so like I'm speaking this language, but that means I'm so kind of in the stormwater soup that I have a hard time understanding, like, how do I communicate this to folks who, you know, live it but don't necessarily have the same technical language that I do? What advice would you have?
I would say, so where I can't see you, so, you know, forgive my eyes roaming sort of all over the place. Where are you located?
Oh, sorry, I'm like way over here. I don't really
No,
know
I
what.
mean your work, like.
Oh,
Sorry.
my world. Like, I'm sitting right here. That's a good question. I used to work in the upper Midwest, like the Wisconsin and Illinois.
Uh-huh. Okay. So what we do, all right, we have, for instance, I'm going to give you an example, two concrete examples of what we've done. Environmental literacy, we have a partnership with Nature Forward. Nature Forward is an organization that happens to have an individual on board who really understands how to break down information to into layman's terms. But what we do with her, even with that, is we go through her materials with her. We ask some of our staffers to review the material and say, does this make sense to you? And don't try to understand it. We want you to just read it, and does it make sense to you? Why one of our staffers? Because our actually our little motto that we use is with, by, and for the community. So we look to employ folks from the community in the Resilience Hub. And so they have the perspective of the community always immediately. So if it passes the snuff with our staffer, then you know, it's good to start to use with the community. All right. There's another example with a medical study that we're going to be involved in bringing some innovative treatments to the community. And one of the researchers came with the, you know, the long blurb on what it was about. Absolutely not, you know, no one can understand what this thing was about. And so what we did is we have a senior, an elder from the community, and this is what I would suggest that you do, which whoever it is that you're trying to convey the information, find an organization or a person from that community willing to work with you and work through your materials. So we had this elder sit with this piece of communication, and we asked her, does this make sense to you? No, it absolutely does not make sense to me whatsoever. And until that person can understand and her friend understand, because we then need some more fresh eyes, it's not ready. It's not ready for the community. And you'll be surprised. Nothing actually gets less sophisticated in the communication process. It's just about the perspective. As a scientist in your work, you're so, and I can appreciate this. I'm a trained scientist. I'm a trained neuroscientist. I love talking about the brain and everything about the brain. Not everybody knows all the terminology and wants to get into the you know, the nuts and bolts about it. They just want what we refer to as the pseudoscience part of it, right? But it's all still just as important. So I would encourage you to get really involved with an organization that's literally on the ground, boots on the ground, working with the community, to have individuals look over your work and have them be a part of that process. They too are a stakeholder.
Thank you. That was a great question, a fantastic answer. And I think there was another question in the room. Did you? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Evans. I'm with the EPA. We do a lot of community engagement work in our office, so I'm always interested in the community engagement side of things. So I have like a two for one, I guess. For the gentleman, Matt and Andy, I'm curious, like, how does the community engagement happen for you guys? Like, what kinds of community engagement are you involved in your work, or are you? Is it more on the technical side? And then for Dr. Montgomery, I'm curious to hear about like how the idea of a resilience hub got kind of like sensitized to the community, and how people were like, yes, this is what we need. Like, how did that process happen? Thanks.
Anyone want to jump in? Matt?
I can start. And you know, our engagement is pretty consistent. We do deal with green infrastructure practitioners for about half of our business. And there, you know, we get to use our jargon, and we don't have to think about what we're talking about. We can just talk like we talk in the office. We do have quite a bit of programs that rely on community buy-in, and particularly like private property ownership, where there are questions, because I think a lot of these practitioners struggle with the same things that I do, and I'd imagine others in the room do, when you're talking to community members that don't live and breathe in the world that you do, that they're like, I don't know what this is you're talking about, so I don't trust it. And so part of the work we do there is exactly what Dr. Montgomery suggested. We had recruited volunteers, essentially, like that would be willing stakeholders to just distill the information down. You know, we can do our best to make it plain language. It doesn't have to be reduced in its messaging or reduced in its outcome. It just has to be explained in a way that is meaningful to the person who's listening to it. And for me, the best way to start that is like, what is the problem you are facing? If we can reverse engineer the response to end up at start and end, at the problem that they're facing, rather than say, well, just trust us. This solution will have outcomes that meet what you need. They're too complicated for you to understand, but trust us, this is going to happen. If you can craft your language, one, to be understandable. I use my daughter. I was like, does this make sense to you? And she's, you know, a fourth grader. And if it doesn't, then I know that I've started off on the wrong foot, because I want it to be something that I could talk to anybody that I walk on the street about. And so that community engagement for us starts at, it has to be mutual understanding, because if we don't have that mutual understanding, then we're not going to achieve the benefits that both groups want.
Hold on one second, Kelsey. Is there a mic that, Rachel, maybe?
Sorry,
you.
online people. I was gonna say, can you speak to how that, like, how the engagement happens? Like, do you guys do like, I should know this as somebody who lives in DC, but I don't. Do you guys do like listening sessions or like community meetings, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so we do it. It'll be kind of program specific for me. We have an SRC aggregator community forum that we invite people to join, where we ask questions. We go to ANCs to promote the participation of these businesses that are wanting to kind of proliferate these practices, because for us it is like, we want to, that's their work, but we want to provide support. And again, that stakeholder engagement, we got actual members, you know, Dr. Montgomery talked about Ward 7. We got someone from Ward 5, Ward 7, and Ward 8. You know, that's where a lot of the disenfranchisement has historically existed. And so we have specifically engaged community members that are willing to kind of let us bounce stuff off them and say, no, this doesn't make, and we listen. It's like, it isn't, well, if it doesn't make sense, let me explain it another way that I want to, so you'll get it. It is letting them tell you how they need to understand it. And so we do multiple engagement activities, and we have a grant program, like a local minority owned business incubator program that we're launching. And we had 5 info sessions on that, where we reached out to DSLBD, talking about jargon, or the acronyms, the District Small Business Agency, to get contacts. We reached out to existing community members, the boots on the ground, the people that operate in the areas where we want to see this work happen, to engage people. And we try and hold as many community forums as we can.
Yeah, I'll just build on it a little bit. Yeah, we have several different engagement with community members. I'll just give it a different example, just getting back to, I think trying to apply, technology to help explain as well. I think sometimes I'm a visual person. I know a lot of people are visual. So one of the things with newer technology, like I showed you, like the 2D modeling, having a 2D rendering and showing people exactly how it happened was very powerful. And it's not for every audience. So I was working with business owners that understood their area pretty well. And that really was impactful. So that was a different way. So we had stakeholder, meetings monthly. And so we engaged them throughout kind of the study process. We use those tools, like I mentioned, the 2D modeling and radar rainfall to kind of really get them engaged and have them understand it. And I don't think that works in every community. I think there's different tools you need to use. We've also used, online surveys that are geospatially referenced, so people can go online if they can't get a community meeting and say, I've seen problems here, or I have problems here. And then that gets you kind of a heat map. And then once it gets another visual, right? And, in my experience, more especially when we're going back to like elected official bodies, when you have those visuals, those heat maps or things, it really plays well to them, because I feel like they can distill that down a lot quicker if you're a decision maker. You have a great infographic or you have a nice map, I find you can sway, get more momentum again. And so I think those are the tools that I've been trying to use more. I don't have all the answers, believe me. I'm the same way. How do you communicate this jargon? But I've really tried to use some of the technology and the visual tools. It seems to be somewhat successful in certain areas. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, so just to highlight something, a couple of things. Once we have those volunteers and those community people that, you're using to sort of test language and so forth, what you also have to get used to is breaking away from them. Because what you don't want to do is get comfortable with someone who's now actually increasing their literacy, their environmental literacy, to the point that they're becoming comfortable with the terminology. And now they're easier for you to say, oh, and they go, oh, yeah, that sounds great. And now you've missed the boat because their environmental literacy has increased. I would say, please beware of that. The other reason I mentioned, I brought up the elder, is especially in our marginalized community, there is so much indigenous historical knowledge that the elders in the community know and have and can contribute so much to what we're doing. We underestimate it. No one has ever asked them. No one's ever asked them. And when you ask, there's this plethora of wisdom and knowledge that comes out. You're like, oh, wow, didn't think about that, right? So I just wanted to add that to that question. In terms of how the community got convinced about the Resilience Hub, if you remember my intro, what I said was the DOEE came to Ward 7. Generally speaking, the marginalized community in Ward 7, made up of Black and Brown communities, are very untrusting towards the government, because there's a history of information, just extraction. We come, we gather, we leave, and nothing is left behind. So that suspicion was there when DOEE came to Ward 7 and said, we learned about, community-led resilience hubs, and we really want to do this. And in order to continue the conversation, DOEE had to, and this is a compliment to DOEE, had to release control of the process to the community. It was the only way the community was willing to continue the process. Said, if yes, we're willing to do this, but on our terms, we will set the tone. We will do our own research. We will define what we need in this community-led resilience hub. And again, to their credit, DOEE said, okay, that's fine. Let us know how we can be supportive. All of this was before my time. I've only been involved in this process for 4 years. I really came in after the selection was made, and right after COVID. So the difficult thing became even more difficult, and I said yes to it. Still no regrets. But yeah, that's how the community came on board.
Great. Well, we are beginning to reached the end of our time. And one of the things I also appreciate about this group is that you are all doers. You're ready to take the information from events like today and not just be inspired, but to take action. And so I'll end by asking each of our panelists if you could take just 30 seconds and share a nugget of what you recommend to this group of practitioners based on your experience and maybe the discussion today. What do you hope that they might tactically do in their work moving forward? And anyone can start.
I don't know any of us can do 30 seconds, but I'll try. Now, I mean, from my perspective, my passion is, unfortunately, with stormwater management, we've made very simple solutions over the last 50 or 60 years. We are paying for it very dearly. As climate has become more intense, we don't have really control over how our high impervious areas are capturing water and routing downstream. And at some point, you come to a point downstream where a marginal community most likely is being dramatically impacted because we've captured it from the areas that we've redeveloped, we've pushed it downstream because we don't have system models. So my biggest, I guess, leave behind for you here today is we have to start understanding stormwater management needs to be looked at a systems level. And it's not just running one simple calculation. We have to start looking at these systems and understand the total risk, not just the risk of one area, but what happens downstream. And as you've laid out, Matt, we don't have enough funding for a lot of these things. So oftentimes stormwater, we don't have that funding. We don't do system models. We make, to be very honest, we make a lot of guesses. We put a lot of infrastructure in the ground and then we hope it works. So my biggest thing is I think we need to elevate that and start looking at stormwater systems and how can we come up with solutions that really address the problem, not just shove it downstream. That's my biggest.
I'll aim for 30 seconds, but I might not get there. For me, I would suggest, like, don't be afraid to be innovative in your approaches and your pitches, but understand that innovation usually gets met by a lot of pushback. And so we talked about simple language when we're engaging our stakeholders. Sometimes I think you need simple language when you're engaging your decision makers above you as well. And you have to talk in the language that they understand. And you know, as Andy, I thought it was kind of getting to, it's like we have simplified stormwater management, and that's what our decision makers understand. Like gray infrastructure costs this much money to do this much, and that's all we can afford. You got to think about innovation on how you can stack benefits, how you can achieve triple bottom line outcomes, and what the values of those are to start being impactful in making your decisions, because otherwise we continue to get left behind.
Wow, this is really difficult for me. So actually I have a couple of things. In the work that you do, I want you to consider how you can make it holistic when broadening it into community capacity building. I think when the work that's done, BGI work that's done, that's broadened into community capacity building, I think that will give nuggets of interest in terms of, you know, the buy-in that you need and so forth. So that's just sort of the plug for, you know, that community component. But one thing that I do as a doer when I go to speak to anybody is I focus on the 4 wins. So I'll share them here. Is what's the win for them? Them is the project, like whether it's BGI, whatever. So that's the them. What's the win for us, me, you, having a conversation about how we're going to collaborate, right? What's the win for you, the organization or the individual, literally selfishly you, your win in doing this? And what's my selfish win for doing this? So if I can't answer 4 wins on something, then it's probably going to be a really difficult thing to get, you know, buy-in and so forth and get someone to be interested. So that's what I do.
Wonderful. Fantastic advice and excellent conversation. Thank you so much for sharing.
Hey, everyone. We just want to do a rapid fire where we hear some of the great insights that you're all having. I can, what am I doing with the sound? One second.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm not going to call in anyone specifically, but I would love to just go around. Ideally, just hearing one quick thing from each group of something you heard that struck you from your conversation. Might start with the folks online. Unless Marianne, do you want a second?
No, we can start.
Okay.
One great takeaway from our discussion was the value of public-private partnerships, especially in the current federal funding environment, and how we can kind of take down those sector walls to work together in collaboration more effectively to get some of these projects done. And we had a great example from Dr. Montgomery of using virtual power plants, which I had never heard of before, which is essentially allowing the utility to pay for access to power from microgrids when they're not using that extra power. So I just thought that was really interesting. There were some more examples of engaging developers in flood mitigation for their access to build in that area, for example. I just think there was so many great examples of how P3s could be structured to help make these projects happen. Does anyone else online want to add to that?
No, I think you captured it well. And I'll say for the developer example, and just to give a little bit of texture there, is how to really educate developers on BGI challenges and solutions, so that rather than having a more contentious conversations with developers about what they can't do around these areas, is okay, with what you're looking to do, how can you be part of the solution?
It's great. Thank you. Any other volunteers in the room? I said I wouldn't call it. Okay, great. Ravina, I was going to say, I was going to break my word. Would you mind just introducing yourself or actually, would you mind going up front just so they can see you too?
Sorry. Hi. Where is that? Oh, hi. I'm Ravina. I'm a senior program associate at Smart Growth America. I do a lot of Complete Streets work, and we had a really nice conversation that I will keep thinking about, specifically a like no regrets form of infrastructure development. Like if we're building for disaster that we are unsure of, let's build something that's great, regardless of if the disaster happens or not. And then we also talked about the like expanding definition of infrastructure, where, okay, like we all agree that like pipes and electricity is infrastructure, but now there's a growing understanding that there's social infrastructure too.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Maybe just two more. All right, Kelsey.
I'm Kelsey again, EPA. I chatted with Stefan, putting you on the spot for Macy EEE. And something that Stefan said that I thought was wise is when in reflecting on the first question here, like how do you do resilient infrastructure successfully? We talked about like how does your lived space actually work? Like we had a conversation about how I feel like we can get really wonky in these spaces because we're like so in this work, but it's like how do you take a step back and think about like, okay, what are people's real lives? How does this place like actually work for real human beings? So.
All right. Does anyone want to close us out with one final thought? That's a great thought, Kelsey. So we'll let you be the last one. I will say the simple and amazing thing that I will remember is Dr. Montgomery's win-win-win-win setup. I'm going to use that for like all aspects of my life and also my work. Love that. So I just want to give one more hand to everyone in the room for contributing, and again to Matt and Andy, Dr. Montgomery, and just want to thank you. For the folks online, this is where we say goodbye to you, and we really appreciate the opportunity to again to hear your thoughts. And yes, and I have an announcement from Kelsey.
I just want to say thank you to Matt and Lindsay, who just, I don't know, somehow just like amazingly pulled this all together and like didn't ask for any support. They were just like, here's this amazing meeting we have planned for you all. So thanks, Matt and Lindsay.
And I would like to say
Thanks,
something.
Kelsey.
Can you hear me? I would like to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I also wanted to thank Lindsay and Matt because I have been part of these hybrid meetings, and I told them, I said, I've been part of these before, and some of them went badly. I was so frustrated. I'm local DC, but I'm visiting my children out here in California, so I couldn't be there in person. And so I just wanted to give you all a shout out. You did exactly what we talked about. I have felt included and a part of the process, even though I'm virtual. And it was really well done. And I've appreciated this discussion this afternoon. Thank you all.
Thank you.